So usually when we look at like a beautifully finished product, a pristine pair of custom leather shoes, or I don't know, even just a perfectly sealed jar of pickles on a grocery store shelf, we imagine this really elegant symphony of planning.
Oh, sure.
We assume the blueprints were drawn up, the master schedule was set, and everybody just perfectly played their part to bring it into existence. But if you actually step onto a factory floor, that pristine sheet music just turns into, well, chaotic noise.
Oh, absolutely. Machines break down, materials arrive late, priorities clash constantly. It is the absolute definition of a daily battleground.
Right.
Bridging that massive gap between the immaculate, idealized plan on paper and the chaotic reality of getting physical things made on time, it's one of the most complex challenges in any industry.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. Today, we are looking at a huge stack of operations management research and supply chain textbooks to decode that exact puzzle, a concept known as production activity control, or PAC.
Yeah, PAC.
We're going to explore how three radically different philosophies, so traditional MRP, lean, and the theory of constraints, how they battle the messy reality of execution. And I want to emphasize to you listening, whether you are managing a massive global supply chain or you're just, trying to figure out how to optimize your own daily workflow at your desk, understanding these execution systems will completely change how you view productivity.
It really will. And what's fascinating here is that at its core, this isn't just about factories. It's about how work actually gets done. PAC is the execution arm of planning. So if the higher level master schedules are, say, the architectural blueprints for a house, production activity control is the construction crew actually swinging the hammers on a Tuesday afternoon.
Right, the guy's actually doing the work.
Exactly. Its entire job is to authorize, plan, and release individual orders while making the absolute best use of resources.
Okay, so let's unpack this. To understand how this construction crew operates, we first have to deconstruct a concept that trips up a lot of systems, and that is lead time.
Yes, lead time.
We usually just think of lead time as the total time it takes from, starting a process to finishing it. But breaking it down reveals where all the hidden waste actually lives.
Right, because lead time is definitely not just one solid block of productive work. For a single operation, you can divide lead time into two very distinct categories.
Okay.
You have operation time, which is the actual load on the work center, and inter-operation time, which is, well, basically everything else.
So what's operation time?
Operation time is what we usually picture when we think of manufacturing. It consists of the setup time, getting the machine ready, calibrating it, and then the runtime, which is the time actually spent transforming the material.
Okay, so if I'm, say, cutting sheet metal, the setup is me loading the metal and programming the laser, and the runtime is the laser actually making the cuts.
Exactly.
That part makes total sense. But then we have the other half, the inter-operation time. And this is where things get really sticky.
Yeah, they do, because inter-operation time is entirely non-load time. It includes queue time, which is just the material sitting around waiting before the operation even begins.
Just collecting dust.
Basically. Then there's wait time, which is sitting around after the operation is complete, maybe waiting for a forklift. And finally, move time, the physical transport to the next station.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me, because the operations research highlights this deeply surprising fact. Queue time is often the largest component of lead time by a massive margin.
Oh, huge.
I started thinking about this like going to a major crowded theme park, right?
But
The runtime, the actual roller coaster ride you paid to experience, is maybe 90 seconds long.
if you're lucky.
Right. The setup time is the attendant checking your lap bar. That takes 20 seconds.
And the queue time is you standing in a winding, zigzagging line for 2.5 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then maybe you sit on the brake run at the end of the ride for 5 minutes waiting for the station to clear. That's your wait time. Your entire day is consumed by interoperation time, not the actual rides. Or, think of going to a doctor's office.
Oh, that's another great one.
You get a 10-minute exam, but you spent an hour reading old magazines in the waiting room.
That analogy perfectly highlights why PAC focuses so relentlessly on minimizing these non-value-added times. Queue, wait, and move times add zero value to the final product.
Right. The sheet metal doesn't become more valuable just because it sat in a bin for 3 weeks.
Exactly. From a scheduling perspective, if you can shrink the line at the theme park, you drastically improve your overall cycle time and throughput. You get more finished goods out the door without actually making the machines run any faster.
Wow. Okay, so because you have this chaotic reality of endless queues, management first has to design the physical environment where the work happens. And the research outlines two major distinct battlegrounds for this.
Right. Intermittent manufacturing versus flow manufacturing.
Let's start with intermittent. The literature describes this as batch production using functional layouts, which basically means grouping similar machines together, like putting all the welding machines in one room and all the paint booths in another.
Yeah, and the defining characteristics here are high variety and highly variable operation times. Because you are making many different types of custom products, the workflow isn't a straight line.
Right.
It bounces around from department to department based on whatever specific routing that custom product needs.
The classic example in the sources is making custom shoes in batches. You might have a leather cutting room, a stitching room, a sole gluing room. The shoes move in batches, zigzagging all across the factory floor.
And the inevitable result of all that zigzagging is a lot of work in process, or WIP inventory, and relatively slow throughput.
Contrast that complex web with flow manufacturing. This is your classic mesmerizing assembly line.
Yes, instead of a functional layout, it uses a cellular or product-based layout. The routing is fixed.
It's a straight line, like a continuous pickle-jarring plant that never stops, or a continuous glass factory dedicated to just one type of glass.
Yeah.
The operations are perfectly balanced, the flow is highly predictable, the WIP inventory is almost non-existent.
And the throughput is incredibly fast.
Right. But okay, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure.
Because looking at those two descriptions, isn't intermittent manufacturing just inherently inferior? I mean, if intermittent means slow throughput, giant queues, and massive piles of inventory just sitting around, while flow means lightning fast, perfectly balanced efficiency, why would any company ever choose intermittent? Why not just make everything a flow system?
It's a very common reaction to look at it that way, actually, but it fundamentally comes down to what the company is competing on. Intermittent is not a failed design. It is a deliberate, necessary design for high-variety custom products.
Okay.
You simply cannot make a highly customized batch of bespoke leather shoes on a high-speed, continuous pickle line.
That would be a very weird shift.
Right. Flow manufacturing requires rigid standardization to achieve that speed. If your market demands broad product variety, custom designs, and flexibility in volume, you have to accept the complex routings of an intermittent layout. You are actively choosing flexibility over pure, rigid speed.
So the environment dictates the rules.
Yeah.
And because managers had to deal with this chaotic, zigzagging, intermittent environment historically, they panicked. They tried to control all that complexity by forecasting everything from the top down.
Yes, and that birthed the first major execution philosophy we need to cover, the push system, which heavily relies on MRP, or material requirements planning.
Right. So in an MRP-based push system, everything is driven by forecasts. Management looks ahead, predicts what the market will want next quarter, and just pushes detailed schedules down onto the factory floor to make it happen.
Yeah, it relies on extremely complex work orders and something called input-output control to try and manage those massive queues.
Let's actually talk about input-output control, because it sounds like jargon, but it's a pretty practical mechanism.
It is.
Think of it like a bouncer at an exclusive nightclub. The bouncer, representing input control, will not let 3 new people into the club until 3 people leave, which is the output control.
Oh, that's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah, it's a way to ensure the factory floor doesn't get dangerously overcrowded with WIP inventory.
True, but even with that bouncer at the door, the overarching goal of a push system is usually high work center utilization. The prevailing mindset when these systems were developed was that idle machines are wasting money.
Right, keep them busy.
Exactly. You want those machines running constantly, pushing inventory to the next step, regardless of whether the next step is actually ready for it.
So it's like a restaurant kitchen cooking 100 burgers at 4:00 p.m. just because a historical forecast software said there might be a dinner rush later.
Basically, yeah.
You are aggressively pushing inventory out blindly, maximizing your cook's utilization, and just hoping the demand shows up to eat those burgers before they get cold.
Which naturally leads to massive piles of cold burgers. Or, in manufacturing, huge stockpiles of excess inventory waiting in queues.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because in response to all that waste, the industry developed lean-based scheduling, which is a pull system. And this flips the script entirely.
Completely.
Lean is relentlessly demand-driven. You don't make a single thing until the customer or the next step downstream in the process actually asks for it.
And because of that, lean completely redefines how we view capacity. Unlike the traditional MRP approach that panics if a machine is sitting idle, Lean actually de-emphasizes pure utilization.
Wait, really?
Yeah. In Lean, having surge capacity, meaning machines or workers who aren't running at 100% all the time, is considered a strategic advantage. The ultimate goal isn't to keep everyone constantly busy. The goal is fast flow and low inventory.
Keep the product moving smoothly, even if the machine has to take a breather in between. And to achieve that smooth flow, Lean relies on a mathematical heartbeat called takt time, T-A-K-T. The operations research gives a brilliant breakdown of this.
It does.
Takt time is simply your available production time divided by the rate of customer demand.
It matches your production rate exactly to the rhythm of the market. So if you have 890 minutes of available production time in a day, and the customer demand is exactly 890 units a day.
Your takt time is 1 minute per unit.
Exactly. You need a finished product coming off the line every 60 seconds. No faster, no slower.
Because making it faster doesn't help. Nobody is buying it yet.
Right.
And to maintain that steady 60-second rhythm, Lean uses a practice called hijunka, or production leveling. You smooth out the volume and mix of products so you have an even, predictable flow rather than massive chaotic spikes in production that overwhelm the floor.
And to actually execute this pull mechanism on the floor level, Lean relies on visual signal systems known as Kanban.
I've heard of Kanban.
Yeah, the research details a few variations, but the two-card system is the most rigorous. It uses production cards and move cards to orchestrate the flow.
Okay, let's walk through the physical mechanics of this because it's so different from a manager just yelling, "Build more!"
It really is.
Let's say I'm running Work Center 2, and I need parts. The parts are held in a controlled inventory area called a supermarket between our stations. I take a move card, which is my strict authorization to go to the supermarket and transport a standard fixed container of parts back to my station. I pull only what I need.
And the moment you take those parts, you free up a production card that was physically attached to them in the supermarket.
Oh, I see.
That production card now travels back upstream to Work Center 1. That single piece of cardboard is the sole authorization for Work Center 1 to start making a new match to replace exactly what you just took.
So the real genius of Kanban isn't the physical cards themselves, it's the underlying psychology.
How do you mean?
Well, it structurally removes a manager's ability to arbitrarily push workers to go faster. The strict rule is all containers have standard quantities, and absolutely no extra production is permitted without that specific Kanban card returning.
Right.
It forces management to accept that overproduction is a cardinal sin.
The system makes overproduction impossible without deliberately breaking the rules.
Okay, so we have MRP pushing based on forecasts, and Lean pulling based on demand. What happens when you inherit a factory that is just fundamentally out of balance? What if neither pushing nor pulling solves a massive structural traffic jam on the floor?
That brings us to the third philosophy, Dr. Eliyahu Goldratt and the theory of constraints, or TOC.
Right. And TOC is a powerful paradigm shift because it approaches the factory almost like physics.
It does.
The core philosophy is that complex systems have inherent simplicity. In any sprawling, chaotic manufacturing environment, there's usually a very small number of variables, often literally just one constraint or bottleneck, that limits the entire system from achieving its goal of higher throughput.
So if you have a massive factory with 50 machines, but machine number 12 is the slowest.
Machine number 12 is dictating the output of the entire company.
Exactly. Which leads to the golden rule of TOC. Strengthening a non-bottleneck area is an illusion.
An illusion?
Yeah. If your constraint can only process 80 units an hour, upgrading a machine downstream to process 300 units an hour yields zero net gain for the plant. You will still only sell 80 units an hour.
Wow. Okay, this brings me to a point in the operations research that is incredibly counterintuitive for most business leaders. It explicitly states that using a non-bottleneck area 100% of the time does not result in 100% utilization, just more WIP.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? Are we saying that intentionally leaving machines idle or having workers literally standing around doing nothing is actually a good thing?
In the context of the theory of constraints, yes, it is vital. Think about the mathematical reality of it. If a non-bottleneck worker runs at 100% capacity, aggressively producing 150 parts an hour, but the bottleneck machine down the line can only process 80 parts an hour, What actually happens to those extra 70 parts every single hour?
I mean, they just pile up into a massive mountain in the queue right in front of the bottleneck.
Exactly. You aren't creating throughput. You are creating a traffic jam. You are tying up corporate cash in raw materials, cluttering the physical floor space, and drastically increasing your overall lead time.
Right.
In TOC, every non-bottleneck area must be completely subordinated to the bottleneck. Their maximum utilization is dictated entirely by whatever the bottleneck can swallow.
Okay, let's unpack how a manager actually schedules that on a Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. TOC executes this using a framework called drum buffer rope.
Right.
Let's think about the components. If the bottleneck is the ultimate constraint, I'm guessing that's the drum, it is literally beating the rhythm, setting the maximum pace for the entire factory.
It acts very much like takt time in Lean, actually. But instead of being based on customer demand, the drum's beat is based strictly on the physical reality of the constraint's maximum output rate.
But if that single bottleneck machine is so critical, you can't ever afford to let it run out of work. Because if the drum stops beating, the whole march stops.
Exactly.
An hour lost at a non-bottleneck is just idle time. But an hour lost at the bottleneck is an hour lost for the entire plant. You can never get it back.
Yeah.
So you have to protect it.
Is that where the buffer comes in?
That is the buffer. It is a strategic time buffer, essentially a curated pile of inventory placed immediately in front of the bottleneck. Its entire purpose is to absorb any upstream delays so the bottleneck is never ever starved of work.
Which leaves the rope. I'm picturing a literal rope tied from the bottleneck all the way back to the start of the production line.
That's the perfect way to visualize it. The rope is the communication link. It ties the pace of the drum directly back to the raw material release point.
Oh, I see. It ensures that raw materials are released onto the floor only as fast as the drum beats. It prevents that 150-part-an-hour worker from flooding the system because they aren't even given the raw materials to do it.
It pulls the materials in at the exact right speed. Drum, buffer, rope. It is fascinating how radically different these three approaches are when dealing with the exact same factory floor.
It really is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows that there is no single universal right way to schedule execution.
No.
A high-variety custom manufacturer needs a different PAC system than a continuous flow food processor. It entirely depends on your physical environment, your product variability, and, where your constraints lie.
So to summarize the journey we've taken today, we started by looking at the hidden waste inside lead times. Specifically, how massive queue times build up in intermittent batch environments. To manage that chaos, we explored MRP acting as a push system, using input-output controls and top-down forecasts to keep machines busy. Then we saw Lean flip that into a pull system, using takt time and the strict psychology of Kanban cards to build only what is demanded.
And finally, we explored the theory of constraints, isolating the single bottleneck and pacing the entire factory to it using drum buffer rope.
It's a fundamental shift in how we define efficiency. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought that builds on everything we just discussed. Toward the end of the operations research, the literature briefly pivots away from manufacturing physical goods to talk about the service industry.
Oh, this is a great point.
And it notes something critical. Service capacity is inherently perishable.
Which changes the physics of the entire discussion.
The research gives a specific example. A hotel room shelf life is exactly 1 day. If a room goes empty on a Tuesday night, you cannot store that Tuesday night capacity in a warehouse and sell it to a customer on a busy Friday.
No, you can't.
The product literally vanishes into thin air if it isn't consumed in the moment.
Time itself becomes the only inventory you have.
Right. So I want you to imagine trying to apply the manufacturing PIP concepts we just learned to, say, a hospital emergency room or a massive hotel. How does the perishability of a service fundamentally break traditional push or pull scheduling?
It's a tough puzzle.
How in the world would you redesign a drum buffer rope system when you can't physically build an inventory buffer in front of your bottleneck doctor because your product time vanishes if it isn't used right now?
This raises an incredible question about how we optimize execution when we can't stockpile our way out of variability.
Think about that the next time you're standing in a queue for 2 hours waiting for a service. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.